this celebration of life. And on behalf of Norma and the Buckwald family, we thank you. We thank you for taking the time to be here. This opportunity to meet friends, meet individuals we haven't seen for some time, as well as to remember Ken and the life that he lived, but even more than that, to stop and intentionally remember the impact that he had on your life. Each of us had a unique experience of Ken. And that's why these celebrations are so valuable, because they allow us to share with each other. We have the opportunity to share our memories, and we get to hear new things about who Ken was and the difference that he made in all of our lives. But this is not only a celebration of Ken's life, but it is also an opportunity for us to stop and remember that eventually we will all experience some form of celebration of our lives. We also will come to a point where our life will be over. And so this is an opportunity for us to remember to live intentionally. Every time I imagine in my mind that Ken performed a service like this, it made him stop and think about his life and the difference that he could make in other people's lives. So again, on behalf of Norma and the family, I thank you for being here with us for this celebration of Ken Buckwald's life.
Please pray with me. Spirit of life, you are the creator of life and the comforter in death. Be present with us this day in our remembering, our celebrating, and our letting go. You nurture us with a love deeper than any we know, and from your river flows healing and comfort in our time of loss. As you walk in the valley of every shadow, be our good shepherd and sustain us while we walk this journey with you. May the light of hope and peace shine brightly upon all those gathered here. We are grateful for Ken's suffering that is past, his physical pain which has become glory, and he now sees his Lord face to face and is part of that heavenly host who has gone before us. Amen.
Spirit
Hear now these words from St. Paul from the 13th chapter of Corinthians. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, suddenly from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where
confirmation and ordination scripture from Revelation. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Beware, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison so that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have affliction. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life.
Wow, where to start? As I look back over time, I find myself wondering, did I remember to thank you enough for all you have done for me? For all the times you were by my side to help and support me, to celebrate my successes, to understand my problems and accept my defeats, or for teaching me by your example the value of hard work, good judgment, courage and integrity. I wonder if I had ever thanked you for the sacrifices you made to let me have the very best. And for the simple things like laughter, smiles, and times we shared. If I have forgotten to show you my gratitude enough for all the things you did, I'm thanking you now and hoping you knew all along how much you meant to me. My earliest memories were at the age of 2 when we went to Tombstone with my grandpa Buckwald. We walked the streets and watched the gunfights. This was just the beginning of a lifetime of amazing travels and adventures that I will never forget. Lynn and I experienced travels with our parents that many people have never had. We have traveled in our motorhome from one end of Canada to the other, all of the United States, including a very memorable jaunt through Kansas during tornado season. It was pretty much a daily occurrence at that time to listen to The Wizard of Oz on the cassette player. Yes, cassette was the thing back then. No DVD players with screens on the back of headrests of the vehicle. Anyway, as we were traveling through Kansas, we were surrounded by 3 tornadoes. I remember the ominous dark blue-green skies and clouds and talking to truckers on the CB radio, and they had us follow them to a safe place. Yes, there was a time before cell phones. Needless to say, that was the end of The Wizard of Oz for that trip. I know that I speak for Lynn as well when I speak of so many fond memories we made on our vacations, including spending a month in Hawaii during the summers for a number of years, and many trips to San Diego and Disneyland. We were very fortunate to have a stay-at-home mother for most of our years living at home, and a father that could break away from his ministerial requirements at the Church of the Beatitudes, as well as being president and CEO here at the Beatitudes Campus of Care, to spend some vacation time with us. We actually spent so many Christmases and New Year's in Mazatlan with our dear friends, the Davies, that Lynn and I finally asked if we could just have a Christmas at home. While it was so much fun to look back on those memories, it was always nice to be able to reminisce about them in the past. Everyone there in the RV park would pitch in money for fireworks, and they would launch them for literally hours every New Year. This was just the tip of the iceberg for what my parents did in Mexico. For 12 years every summer, they took members of our church youth group to Guadalajara, Mexico for 2 weeks at a time. They rebuilt recreation centers that literally had large rocks sticking out of the concrete basketball courts and racquetball courts. They also had other projects, including repairs to the school that we stayed at in Gigantes, Mexico, where the guys actually slept in a converted chicken coop, and we used outdoor bathrooms with nothing but a large hole in the ground. They also built an open-air school in the tiny impoverished town of Oblatos, Mexico, which was the first school that the locals ever had to send their children to, which was named Centro Cultural Norma y Ken, with mom's name being massive and in all caps, as I recall, because now Norma's a common name in Mexico in Spanish, and Ken being all lowercase, and much smaller since his name wasn't. As big of a man as my father was in many people's eyes, this was just one of those times for Mom to have center stage. While you were supposed to be in your late teens before you could go on these missions to Guadalajara, I had the inside line to the people in charge, namely Dad and Mom, and had the privilege of going twice at the age of 12 and 13. Again, so many memories made, including my father's daily wail of, "Up, up, up! There's much to be done in the kingdom." It was also engraved into our heads the address of the location we stayed at, 2282 Gigantes, in case any of us got lost when we were on one of our sightseeing trips that my father led. Even the local teams that pitched in during these trips commented on how much they learned about their own areas from Dad's tours. I'll never forget when we were at a dear family friend's home in Mexico, the Ortiz family, who always hosted a big meal for the group, and Mom and Dad were also celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. For those that closely knew my dad, you know that after a good meal, he never had a problem with relaxing in his lazy boy recliner or wherever he was, finding a comfortable place to relax. And inevitably, he would end up with his mouth open and snoring. So Mom makes a comment to him as he's chillaxing with his feet up after dinner. "Hey, Ken, I can see your garganta," which means throat in Spanish. So he proceeds to look down at his pants, thinking he's got his fly open, and he's showing all of his God-given gifts to the whole group. From this came the gift from the youth group of a very large, very burnt orange and floral papier-mâché hippo with his mouth wide open, that all of the youth group on that trip signed the belly of and made comments. We affectionately named it Garganta, and it was in our den or living room for decades after that. While Lynn and I had the opportunity to take many wonderful vacations with them, our parents also did a lot of traveling together to more countries than I can remember. They were also involved with many missions of faith with fellow clergy of just about every religion, including missions to Israel, and Dad going to Russia as an advisor when the wall came down and all the hospitals were placed in the hands of the churches, which had no idea of how to run them. There were also many years of Saturday tailgating at ASU Stadium with the motorhome backed up to the South Gate, watching ASU football and the Fiesta Bowl. And then at halftime, going back out to the motorhome and Dad perfecting his margaritas, which I know many of you have had the opportunity to partake of, many of you more than once. I can't thank Mom and Dad enough for the vacations back east to visit family from both sides. I have such amazing memories from Grandma and Grandpa Shoemaker's home, including watching the New York Yankees with Grandma Shoemaker. She was diehard, made me diehard. They won 7-0 last night, by the way. Go Yankees! As well as their camp on Long Lake, where I learned to snowmobile in the winter with my cousins and Mom's brother, my Uncle Bill. God rest his soul, he passed too soon. And I learned to water ski in the summer. We had great times in Plattsburgh, New York, at Mom's sister Angie and brother-in-law Uncle Bob's home, sledding with the cousins in the winter, and where I first learned to snow ski at 13 years of age, when we went up to Lake Placid, near their camp on Upper Saranac Lake. My first time down the hill at Big Tupper, no lessons, no nothing. And I never fell once on that bunny hill with a rope tow lift until I got close to the nets in front of the parking lot, and with no clue how to stop before launching into them and then turn into the parking lot, I heard my parents and aunt and uncle screaming at me to fall. This, along with my summers up there water skiing, are again memories I'll never forget. Time for Dad's side of the family in Buffalo, New York, was with Grandma Buckwald, Dad's brother Don, his wife Gus, who was a total hoot, by the way, and all the cousins from his side of the family were wonderful as well. I'll never forget one Christmas when there had been absolutely no snow for the entire year, only to wake up Christmas morning to snow on the ground. What a miracle from God for a little kid. Most evenings were spent together watching Christmas movies and specials, and then around midnight, Uncle Don would order for pizza and buffalo wings from the original Buffalo Wing restaurant, Frank and Teresa's Anchor Bar. He would then go downstairs to the basement and pull out his bottles of Goofy Grape and rose-petal wine that he made. I'll never forget one evening when Lynn apparently decided to imbibe on some of Uncle Don's rose-petal wine, not realizing it was wine, and then proceeding to ask Grandma Buckwald all sorts of questions about her past, as well as the history of other Buckwald and family members. She was a good bit tipsy and slurring her words, which was a dead giveaway to our dad and Uncle Don that she had taken the Blessed Sacrament to a whole new level. Needless to say, after partaking of so much of the blood of Christ, she needed to partake in a good bit of the body of Christ to soak up some of the wine. There were also many times at home where Dad and I would get a bit aggressive with the slap hands game, as well as punching each other in the upper arm, which always led to Mom saying, "Kurt, stop! You're gonna give him cancer!" I got to admit, these actions still take place between my son and myself. And every time it happens around Mom, we always say together, "Stop! You're going to give him cancer!" On Sundays, when services were over and we were leaving the sanctuary, I never had a problem figuring out which set of exit doors my father was at to say goodbye to the congregation. All I had to do was listen for his boisterous laugh as he was either telling a joke or being told a joke. I just listened and said to myself, "Oh, he's over there." You have done well, my father, between starting churches, schools, missions to various countries as well as in our country, countless sermons, weddings, funerals, etc. As well as running the campus, you have touched countless lives and truly made a difference. You may be gone from this earth, but you are truly not forgotten. It spoke volumes to me of Dad's influence within the Beatitudes this last Monday morning when I received a message from one of our dear friends, Stephen Gutkin. His dad, Jerry, Mom Anita, as well as his brothers, Alan, Michael, and Benjamin, lived just down the street from us, and their house was like a second home for them and me. In Stephen's message of condolences for my father, he mentioned how even though his family was very devout in their Jewish religion, when it came time to put their Bubby, which is Jewish for grandmother, in a care center, they decided not to place her in the Kiffel campus of care, which was more Jewish focused, and instead place her in the Beatitudes campus of care because of what my father had made of it. Again, another testament to his depth and breadth of spiritual and physical impact on so many faiths. Dad, I know you're in a better place now, and you are bringing an amazing sense of humor to God and all of his disciples in heaven. Up until your final breath, even though you have been in an amazing amount of pain for the last few months, you never had a negative word for anyone around you. You are an amazing husband to my mom, father, friend, and mentor to Lynn and me. And while I can never fill your shoes, I just pray that I always make you and will continue to make you, as well as my mother, my wife, my sister, my kids, and my friends proud. I have always said to those that have people pass away in their lives, don't mourn their passing, rejoice and celebrate their lives. That is what we are doing right now today for my father. I love you beyond words, Pops. Rest in peace, Bucky. The Lord Jesus has taken away the sting of death through his resurrection. Believers know that for all who are in union with Jesus, their bodies will be united to Christ after death, and they anticipate the hope of the resurrection. The pain is gone, the last enemy is defeated. Death has no victory over the believer. We will never forget you. God bless you, faithful servant of the God Almighty.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessica Hewlett, and I have the privilege of participating in today's service honoring the life and memory of the Reverend Dr. Kenneth H. Buckwald. I'm here representing my mother, Peggy Mullen, who worked with Ken for 18 years and followed in his footsteps as CEO at Beatitudes campus. And although I have many fond memories of my own of Ken, today you'll be hearing my mother's thoughts, so I will begin with her reflections. Dear friends, I wish I could be with you today, and you can certainly assume that I am in spirit. I'm writing this on the train from Florence to Siena, enjoying my first view of Tuscany with family. I am sipping on a glass of good Italian wine, stopping often to tell my traveling companions anecdotes about Ken, and somehow I think Ken would like that. My story of life with Ken begins with my interview for work as the healthcare administrator at our beloved campus. I remember that day vividly. Ken and I chatted for a few minutes in his office, which looked like Fibber McGee's closet, right? And then he installed me in his golf cart, and then like two bats out of hell, we toured the Beatitudes. As I took in the sights and sounds and listened to Ken call out to residents and staff with his big, boisterous greetings, I knew I wanted to work for him. The deal was sealed when we ended the interview in the large kitchen that served the care center and the dining room that is happily now called Buckwald's. We chatted with the staff and munched on cookies, and I knew I was home. Ken and I worked together closely until his retirement 18 years later. He was collegial, fun, kind, and generous. He always included his management team in our national professional conference trips, rather than reserving that privilege for himself. On my first trip with Ken, I recall him coming up that long escalator in Washington, D.C., the one that dumps you out at the foot of the Washington Monument. As we approached the top, we could hear saxophone music, and when we emerged, Ken looked around, spotted the musician, and shouted, "Hey there, Hank, how you been?" The sax player looked up and grinned, let his instrument dangle, and while he and Ken clapped each other on the back and laughed, Hank asked me why I would hang out with a man of such dubious nature, and then off we went with the two men pointing and laughing their goodbyes. That was quintessential Ken. He never met a stranger. Another memory from one of our numerous work trips together, this one from Boston, where the Boston Pops entertained our association one evening. They end all of their performances the same way. A large American flag unfurls behind the orchestra to the strains of our national anthem. When my own emotions surged and I found tears in my eyes, I glanced at Ken, only to see him crying unabashedly, caught up in the beauty of the music and the flag, surrounded by colleagues he loved. He was a tender-hearted man who wore his emotions on his sleeve. Ken and I worked well together. We understood each other. Once, after a long staff meeting that had been a bit contentious and serious, one of our colleagues told me that I treated Ken like my father, and she did not mean it as a compliment. I admit I had to sit back a moment and consider this. She was right. Ken shared many attributes with my dad. He ruled the roost with great benevolence, but he did not suffer fools or whims. I think I had a bit of an inside track with Ken because I understood that bigger-than-life personality. We trusted one another and could always find a way to say what needed to be said. Stories of Ken's relationships with the campus staff are rife with examples of his loving nature and goodwill. He could often be found chatting with the dishwashers and the cooks, and he was known for adding a little more salt to the gravy or garlic to the soup if he thought it was needed. Jay Ayers, who headed the maintenance team for many years, suggested a silver spoon for Ken's retirement to commemorate that habit. The maintenance shed was another favorite haunt of Ken's. He charged his golf cart there every night, so it was the first place he visited each morning. He'd chat with the crew over a quick coffee, laughter always heralded forth, and then he'd go out for a spin around the campus, the informal rounds he made each day to make sure all was well. Ken by nature liked harmony. When the inevitable conflicts arose between his management team members, Ken was Henry Kissinger, diplomat extraordinaire. He would drop into one of our offices for no apparent reason, and eventually the conversation would make its way to why someone found something or other troublesome. Then he'd listen a bit to the counter view and off he'd go. Of course, he was on to the next chat where he'd repeat the exercise. He did not take sides, but somehow we all came around to settle the issue. Truth be told, I think he just wore us out with his brand of shuttle diplomacy. Ken was one of the most forgiving people I have ever known. He always welcomed the prodigals back, and he always joyfully killed the fatted calf. He loved people, and he only saw the good in them, even when they deserved a bit more accountability. I said earlier that he had my back. In truth, he had everyone's back. It was hard for Ken to discipline anyone. Employee evaluations noted the things we had done well and encouraged us to do more. He kept no records of our mistakes or shortcomings. While Ken never met a stranger, his inner circle was close and characterized by trust and loyalty. David and Elaine Davies were more than friends. They were trusted advisors and confidants. He turned to them in times of personal and campus trial for their wisdom. In return, when Elaine underwent back surgery over the Easter season, I think it was in Chicago, Ken traveled there to take her communion on Holy Thursday. A similar relationship existed between the Buckwalds and Chuck and Heidi Ditch. I suspect many a kitchen cabinet took place in the three family kitchens, though more than likely this would be over cocktails in the evening. It is impossible to list all the professional and civic organizations that Ken served. He, like his good friend and colleague, Reverend Culver Nelson, believed this church, and by extension its ministries, were to be leaders in our various disciplines and in the larger community. Ken played a key role in the planning and early administration of Beatitudes Saint, supported in every way he knew their incredible sister ministry, formerly called Center Door, now Duet, Partners in Aging. He saw the church, the campus, interfaith ministries, Duet, and AgeLink as a web of services that served people from womb to the tomb. And he never got tired of sharing the good news about them to anyone who crossed his path. He was rightly proud of this remarkable family of services. And speaking of family, let's talk about Norma, his beloved wife and companion on the road of life for 60 plus years. Once when he and I were arguing a bit over something little or other, and both of us were at the point of exaggeration, he actually called me Norma. We both stopped short in surprise, and then he laughed that booming laugh of his and said, "That's a compliment, you know." And I do consider it a compliment. Norma, you have been the helpmate and companion that every person aspires to be. Ken knew he was loved, even when he knew little else. Kurt and Lynn, your father's love for you was obvious as well. I met him when you were young adults, and he loved to tell stories of your antics at college and your early business successes. As you hit your middle years and the difficulties and challenges that are inherent in every adult life became your difficulties and challenges, he worried and grieved along with you. I think Ken was one of those people that takes on the joys and sorrows of those he loves, and when he can't fix the hurts, he suffers the pangs of frustrations and efforts thwarted. Ken's love extended to the spouses and grandchildren that Lynn and Kurt brought to the family. He and Norma joined Lynn in her efforts to care for her husband, Kendall Core, through his long and difficult illness. He rejoiced in Kurt's children, Jordan and Jake, and his happiness with Anne. And of course, no children were smarter or better looking than Jake and Jordan. As I write this, I can close my eyes and see my good friend Ken. He's wearing one of the white cotton shirts he loved from his middle years when he and Norma made so many field trips with this church down to Guadalajara. His glasses are tipped slightly so he can see you and still look beyond. Ken hated to miss anything. He's gazing at us now, I am sure, amazed at the good friends gathered and the affection we feel for him. Ken was blessed often with the privilege of offering the eulogy for parishioners or other good friends. He always ended with these words, which we now offer as we commend him to the arms of his God that he loved and trusted so well. Well done, good and faithful servant. Go now into the arms of your Lord. And as he trusted, we trust. May it be so. Amen.
(1972). That's when I met King Buckwald. I was here on sabbatical leave from a college in Ohio, Defiance College, and I was learning what I could from the wonderful campus here about caring for older people, and especially the relationship to churches. And I did not work much with Ken Edgar. He was involved in the church life things before he had come to the campus. But we were beginning to get acquainted. Now, we returned to Ohio for 1 year and then back to Phoenix permanently in 1974 when Ev Luther was then the CEO. This is the Luther Life Center, so some folks wondered how come it was called Luther. That was Ev Luther. And I was delighted then to get to know Ken in a more intimate fashion. I was given the summers off for 2 years to go up to Ann Arbor, University of Michigan, to work on a gerontology certification. And when I came back, I had to have an advisor for my field work here on campus. Well, Ken was my advisor, and that was a wonderful experience. At first, I was kind of intimidated by him. You know, he was a forceful person. I was a newcomer. And so I learned to work with him in remarkable ways. And he was very helpful in my work on this fieldwork experience, and I discovered that he was indeed a man of generous spirit, a penetrating mind, and a heart focused on service. One of my special memories includes the bicentennial celebration that our church involved with. You remember how we were up there at Pioneer Village, and we were doing, you all remember, right? It was in 1976, and that was a wonderful experience because our church people were all encouraged to make colonial-style clothing, right? Well, that Buckwald family was wonderful. They were so cute. Little Kurt, little Lynn, you remember? They were all dressed up. I had some pictures I cherish of that experience. And I realized then how much Ken was focused on his family. It was beautiful. I also recall our times up in Munns Park, where the Nelsons had a cabin, and we had our retreats up there for the staff. And it was a time of combinations of serious work and a lot of fun and hilarity. And Ken was particular in, in making sure that there were refreshments at the happy hour time, right? He was devoted to the denomination of the United Church of Christ, but his roots were with that part of our UCC, which is the Evangelical Reformed part. And his roots were with that German portion of our UCC. And I know that, I'm glad you sang the Mighty Fortresses Are God, and that was right, a German hymn. And Gott Himmel, their Ken appreciated his German roots, and they were part of his faith in a very special way. Now, I mentioned Defiance College as a place where I had been before I came here. And I think you've noticed perhaps from some of the notices about him that he received his doctorate from Defiance College. And how that happened is that Defiance College, the president under whom I served in the faculty, Kevin McCann, in a sense brought me to his campus to be on the staff. And when Kevin McCann, the president, and his wife Ruth retired, I brought them to this campus. And so it turned out that Kevin McCann, a remarkable man who'd been an advisor to President Eisenhower in the battlefield at Columbia and the White House, Kevin McCann and Ken bonded in interesting ways. And Ken was so impressive to Kevin that Kevin thought this man deserves an honorary degree. So I'm delighted that we're connected in a way through that association. And at Ken's retirement, after that, he continued to help with the church. In one particular way, I was involved with a group we called Careways. We had periodic luncheons at the church for some of the folks who couldn't get out to worship with us. And Norma was always helping with a meal, wonderful cook. But she'd often say, well, you know, Ken helped me do this too. He helped cut up a chicken, and he did a lot of the shopping, and I'll bet he got a good deal on the stuff he bought, right? All right, okay. So, another example of his involvement in the life of the church involves the Ham family. Lily and Bob Ham and their families represented here. And Lily explained to me how Ken was involved with 5 generations of that family in baptisms and weddings and celebrations of life for grandchildren, great-grandchildren, parents and grandparents, all through the generations. And that reminded me of the ways that Ken served not only the older people in the congregation and the campus, but people of all ages were important to him. He loved the Psalms, and often at times of celebrations or mealtime for graces, he would quote from one of the Psalms. And one of the ones I often heard him do is come from Psalm 100. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to God, for bless his name. For the Lord is good, his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. This is a God that Ken worshiped and served, and we thank God for Ken's life.
I remember this big, bold, bursting laugh. So unmistakable. A laugh that would bring a smile to your face and remind you of what a special soul and spirit was embodied in the life of Ken Buckwald. I remember as well a faithful and kind pastor, someone who was forever caring for his flock, whether that be in the churches he served over so many years of his ministry, or right here upon the grounds of the Beatitudes campus of care. Ken Buckwald was first and foremost a faithful pastor, as well as being the CEO and administrator of this special place we are gathered in to honor his life today. Ken was the kind of person who knew how to get things done. And if something needed to be purchased for a project, his motto was always, never pay retail, only wholesale. All right? Ken could find a good deal on almost anything and everything. Let me share with you an example of that thought. 40 plus years ago, when I was serving as the chaplain here at the Beatitudes campus of care under Ken's tutelage, he invited me to follow him along on a business trip to a conference of the American Association of Homes for the Aged. We took a plane out of Sky Harbor Airport to St. Louis, Missouri, and to my surprise, upon entering the aircraft, Ken had somehow managed to get us both first-class seats. Well, after a very enjoyable flight, when we landed and were preparing to disembark, I happened to look back at the economy coach section on the plane, only to see staring back up at Ken and I, 5 or 6 faithful members from Church of the Beatitudes, all with puzzled and astonished looks on their faces, wondering how we got such an upgrade that day. That was Ken, though. He knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. And so I remember this professional colleague and personal friend of mine with such fondness and continued admiration. Going way, way back in my life to when I was but a teenager, and my church youth group traveling with Ken and Norma down to Guadalajara, Mexico, on one of the many, many mission trips they led to work at an inner city school for poor children through Manos de Amistad, or Hands of Friendship. We'd always be greeted by the Ortiz family. I think some of them might even be here today. Together, we would paint classrooms, we'd pour new concrete sidewalks, we'd spruce up the surrounding green grounds. And each and every morning, in an effort to rouse tired teenagers from their beds inside that chicken coop Kurt was talking about, Ken would shout out, "Up, up, up! There's much work to be done in the kingdom." At his very core, Ken believed in helping and serving others, be it in far, far away places or right here at home. Even after a long day's work and night of attending staff or board meetings and always making sure that everything was in order, I remember Ken taking the time to stop for a friendly chat with a resident in a wheelchair, or to share a laugh with a housekeeper, nurse, or someone from maintenance and gardening, or simply enjoying a meal next door at Buckwald's Grill with a friend. Ken practiced what he preached, believing in Manos de Amistad, extending a hand of friendship to one and all. And that's what made us love him and care about him and hold him in our prayers as well. All of you gathered here this afternoon remember this good man in so many fond and faithful ways. You remember him as a colleague who respected and valued your service. You remember him as a neighbor, always willing to help. You remember Ken as a friend, someone you could count on. You remember a father who loved you unconditionally, Lynn and Kurt. You remember a husband who loved you, Norma, more than words can say. My wife, Brenda, reminded me before flying down here yesterday from Colorado that Ken and Norma gave us our first baby shower 38 years ago. That's just the kind of people Ken and Norma have always been. And we are here collectively today to say our care for you will never end. 3 months ago, I was back here in Phoenix to visit my mother, who now lives here at the Beatitudes campus. We went down to church on a Sunday morning, and after services, I spotted Ken sitting at a table at the back of Nelson Hall. I went over to say hello. I could see in his eyes that age was catching up with my good friend. So before taking my leave, I put my arm around him and said, "I love you, Ken." His eyes turned towards me, and with that wide, wide smile, he said, "I love you too, buddy." Ken has always been there for me, as I know he has been there for all of you, be it at a wedding, a funeral, or a baptism, or maybe in the back of that motorhome, having dinner in his home, sharing a refreshing beverage. Always, always a good meal. Ken's generosity knew no bounds. His love of life was limitless. His faith in God and knowing the compassion of Christ was personal and deep. His purpose and commitment to making the lives of others better was unquestionable. And at the center of this all, you and I will always, always remember that laugh, that jovial, jolly laugh of Ken's that always left a smile upon your face. That's a memory that will never die. So let me share with you now one final memory that still brings a smile and a laugh for me. It's a story about the time Ken Buckwald and I were both kicked out of St. Joseph's Catholic Hospital here in Phoenix on Thomas Road. Yep. Truth be told, we were once thrown out of that hospital in no uncertain terms. Back in the 1980s, a colleague of Ken's and mine was dying of brain cancer. His name was Winthrop Stewart, a good Scotchman, who at the time was the director of marketing and fundraising here at the Beatitudes, as well as being one of the clergy on the staff. Well, one sunny afternoon, Ken and I decided that we would put on our clerical collars and make a friendly pastoral call to our friend and colleague Winthrop before he passed on to be with God, and to also lift up our dying friend's spirits, so to speak. Ken smuggled into that hospital room a fine bottle of good vintage Scotch. Gathering around the hospital bed, we looked for some glasses. Ken said to me, "Dave, go up in the hallway and see if you can find something for us to pour this into." I did, and I came across a nurse's cart where I proceeded to reverently borrow 3 unused plastic urine specimen cups Ken's room, back in Witten's room, Ken proceeded to pour us each a drink. And then, just as we were lifting our small cups of scotch up to wish Winthrop well on his way with God, who should come walking into the room in her traditional black and white Catholic nun's habit but the head sister from St. Joseph's Hospital, who upon discovering our now ill-fated but certainly well-intentioned pastoral call, exclaimed to us all in shock and horror, "Reverends, I am surprised at all of you, and you two, the tall and short of it, you two march yourselves out of this hospital immediately." Winthrop died a short time later, I'm sure with a smile upon his face. Well, they sell these on the airplane. In that tradition, let me follow by wishing you, Ken, a good journey with God. You, my friend, have been faithful to that holy strand of Scripture, a verse from the Bible that stood at the center of your life and ministry, a sacred thought that you built your life upon, words that simply say, from the book of Revelations, chapter 2, verse 10, "Be faithful unto life, unto death, and I will give you the crown of life." Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. Ken, you have truly been faithful unto death, and there can be no doubt that today you have inherited the crown of life. So we celebrate the life of Ken Buckwald, remembering him with such great fondness and care, and yet forever feeling his presence still whenever we are moved to remember and laugh, knowing full well that the heavenly hosts are certainly welcoming him home in this hour with both peace and protection, but not necessarily offering him eternal rest. For come the morrow, God will greet him with an Easter resurrection chorus of those heavenly voices saying, "Up, up, up, Ken Buckwald. There's much work to be done in the kingdom." God bless you.
Reverend, the next Sunday after worship, Doctor, there are no more reverends and reverend greetings anymore. Ken is missed not only by myself, but by all the members, past and present, from Church of the Beatitudes. It's important we remember that Ken was not always a pastor. There was a time when he was an individual searching for a purpose in life. And then he received a tap on the shoulder. And I imagine that somewhere within Ken, he may have had an experience and heard the words that the prophet Isaiah heard. When the voice of the Lord said, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And Ken said, "Here I am, send me." That was his ministry, a willingness to step out and make a difference. In the scripture, the first scripture that was read for us, I think we capture the essence of one of the driving forces in Ken's ministry. Faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. In his professional ministry, it didn't matter if he was managing groups of individuals, either at the church or at the campus. If it was in the middle of a building project, or even talking to someone one-on-one, over and over, Ken remembered that the greatest of these is love. And Ken knew how to make love real. I imagine that Ken would want us to remember and to be sensitive to that tap on our shoulder. You see, each of us received that tap. That tap to make love real. And so tomorrow will come, and the morning will break. And I hope we will remember how it is that we can truly honor an incredible man. And that is to make love real for someone else.